So we're going to go over equations and inequalities and formulas primarily, okay? The first thing we're going to do is review equation solving, okay? It's very helpful if you have some basic skills. We're going to start with the basics, and then we're going to kind of build that up as we go then, all right? So the first thing that I want to look at is what we mean by a linear equation, okay? A linear equation, and we're going to learn a lot about that because that's a pretty big deal in business. Looks like this. It's just ax plus b equals 0. A is not equal to 0 because if a was 0, you wouldn't have it would cause the x to cancel out. So I'm going to basically just kind of go down here at the bottom here. We're going to work lots of problems out and just kind of review this stuff together. But when I teach an equation, I always think of it like a balance scale. So the idea is if you added, 3 pounds there, you'd have to add 3 pounds there to keep it in balance. If you took away 3 pounds, then you'd have to take away 3 to get in balance. So an equation is like that. You always do the same operation to both sides. And what you typically do is you're going to add, subtract the same thing to both sides, or multiply and divide both sides. That's what we're going to focus on, okay? So, and I'll kind of, as I go through this, I like to just kind of ask questions of the class in general to kind of pace myself and just kind of see what your knowledge is. Okay, so on this one, the very first one, we're going to start very basic one. X needs to be by itself, so what needs to go away? The minus 8. What's the opposite of subtracting 8? Adding 8. So you think of undoing operations. The opposite of subtracting is adding. So you add 8 to both sides, just write that on your paper like that. That cancels that out. So you'd have x equals 10 plus 8 is 18. Okay, that's how you do that, all right? Now, when you check, and a lot of times students don't have a lot of experience checking, you can tell you're right on every single equation you ever solve. What do you do to check? You just plug the answer back in, right? You go back to the beginning, so you're just going to go like this. You would say x is 18, so it would be 18 minus 8 is 10. Is that right? Yeah, okay, so it's right. So see, we know we're right, okay? That's what you can do in math, okay? All right, so that's adding to both sides. The next one, what you're trying to do is to get x by itself, you get rid of 5. Now, that's 5. What does 5x mean? 5 times x. That's important. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 5? Dividing by 5. Yeah, so you divide. So you do that to both sides. You divide by 5, divide by 5. A lot of these problems you'll do in your head, but what happens, that crosses out, that gives you 1x. Now, you don't have to write 1x because 1x is x anyway. And then what's a negative divided by a positive? Okay, you got to review those rules if you need to. Okay, so 15 divided by 5 is 3, but it's negative. So the answer would be x equals negative 3. Okay, everybody see okay what I'm doing? All right, okay. And then when you check, what do? The equation is 5 times the answer equals negative 15. Well, you just plug in the negative 3, and then this is easy enough to do in your head. Is that right? Yeah, it's right. So that's good enough. Okay, if you can do it in your head, that's fine. I want you to be able to do stuff in your head. Okay, all right. The next one, so what number do you need to get rid of so x is by itself? Negative 2. How is negative 2 attached to x? Multiply. That's the reason I'm trying to get you to understand the operation. What's the opposite of multiplication? Dividing. Okay, so you divide by the same number. A lot of times I see students want to just divide by 2, but no, you want to divide by negative 2 because that gives you a positive 1x. That's always your goal, is to get 1x. Okay, what's 18 divided by negative 2? Negative 9. Good. So you got x equals negative 9 like that. Okay, that's it. All right, these are the real fundamental things. This stuff hopefully is real straightforward for you. Okay, we check. We would do negative 2 times the answer and see if it's right. Is that right? Yep, negative times negative is positive, so that looks good. So we're good. Okay, all right. Now those are the basic ones. Now as I kind of go through from here, they'll get a little bit more advanced, just a little bit. So this one right here, you're trying to get the x by itself. So what you're doing is, and you got to do this in a certain order. You got to get rid of the 2, you got to get rid of the 6. You want to always kind of do that last. So how do you get rid of the 6? Add 6, add 6. How do you get rid of the 2? Divide. And you want to do that in that order. Okay, so you want to kind of get these things done in a certain order. So what I'll do is just write on your paper you're adding 6. Okay, that goes to 0. So now it's 2x plus 0. So that's just 2x. And the right side, what's that? 16. Okay. What's the answer in your head? 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, good. So you divide by 2. That gives you 1x, which is x. That's equal to 8. So we have x equals 8. Okay, like that. Okay. All right. When you check, just plug in. So it's 2 times the answer. Minus 6 equals 10. Okay, this one probably write a step to make sure it's right. Okay, we do the multiplication. 16 minus 6 is 10. Once you get to a point where you know it's right, that's good enough. Okay, all right, everybody with me on what I've done so far? Okay, we're going to build up, and they're going to start getting a little more complicated as we go. We'll start getting fractions and stuff like that. Any questions so far? Okay, all right. Now on the next one, there's actually 2 things you got to get rid of. Okay, it's like the last problem. How do you get rid of the 9? Subtract. What else do you got to get rid of after the 9's gone? That's a -1, isn't it? Okay, that you can think of that as -1 times x. I see students a lot of times that I can tell they don't understand that. So what I'm going to have you do is let's just subtract 9 from both sides. That'll wipe that out. That will leave you with -x equals -9. How do you get rid of that negative in front of x? There's 2 ways. Drop it, okay, by doing what? By either dividing by -1 or multiplying by -1. If you drop it on both sides, then you're kind of thinking, okay. All right, so let's just do it this way. Let's just think of that as a -1. So we divide both sides by -1. What's the answer to this problem? Positive 9, right? 2 negatives are going to make a positive when you divide, okay? So that's positive 9. Is that clear? Negative x is -1x, okay? All right, check. We go -9 plus 9 is 0. Is that right? Of course it is. Okay, just plug it in, see if you're right, okay? All right, let's do one last one here, then I'll give you a little time to do some problems, and I'll walk around and see if you're doing okay, all right? So this one, how do you start this one? Subtract 18. Okay, some of you are going to get into background issues here. When you see -30 minus 18, now you can use calculators in this class, but what this to me means is 2 debts. -30 is a debt. Minus 18 is another debt. How much total debt do you have? 48, right? Okay, when you have 2 negatives like that, it's just like you're collecting debts. So that's a total of -48. That's what that is. In other words, it means 30 below 0, backwards on the number line, down 18 more. And you may have to review some of that, I don't know. So that's -12x equals -48. Okay, then what? Divide by -12, good. Okay, so we got to divide by that same number. That's because we're undoing multiplication. What's the answer?
4.
4. Okay, there we go. Okay, all right, I'll bypass the checking on that. I'm not going to do it on every problem. Okay. So what I'd like you guys to go ahead and do is just work on the next 4 problems. I'll have you just do these yourself. I mean, you can work with a partner next to you if you want to. And I want to walk around and just so as I'm getting to know you, just kind of see what your work looks like. Okay? Yeah.
You always have to divide it, right?
You kind of divide at the end. Yeah, it's if you got to add or subtract, you want to get that out of the way. Add and subtract to both sides. If you have a number in front of x, you want to take care of that at the end. Yeah, it's kind of an order that you want to do that in, because if you don't, you'll make the problem more difficult than it needs to be. So that's kind of what you want to do. Okay, so let's just work them out. I do want you to check. I like to have students do that. You may get some kind of weird answers on it, so you've got good background. So, okay, those all working okay? And you can go ahead if you want to. I'm fine with that. Good. I'll show the step. Okay, I want you to show. I know you can do those in your head, but I do want to get people kind of comfortable with step writing. Yep, that's it. Just add 18 both sides. Divide 5, divide 5. Show that you're doing that on both sides. Some of you may have learned how to do equations a little differently the way I'm doing, and we're going to talk about another way to kind of look at this in a minute. Okay, that looks good. write the next one if you want to. I'll get to that. I mean, it's a little, goes a little different. Okay, yeah, you can work ahead if you want to. Because you may have the background to do that. Get rid of 10 first. Yeah, just subtract 10 would be the easiest way to start that. Because it's a positive 10. You can subtract it. Okay. Isn't that okay? These right here, those are the 14. Add 10 and just bring down what's left on the left side. Always bring things down. Or whatever's left over, bring it down. Okay, so get on the right track and do okay. We're going in your head, which is okay. You know, they're going to start getting a little more advanced. So I'm kind of walking around trying to look at how people write steps. Okay, so let's see how we did here. And yeah, you can do a lot of these in your head, particularly, you know, the first couple of them are pretty easy in your head. So what I'm kind of looking for on this one, that you're just showing that you're dividing both sides by 5, that gives x equals 5. Okay, check, just write on your paper, 5 times 5 is 25. That's good enough because you know it's right once you got that. Okay, next one, what do you do to both sides to solve number 2? Add 18. Okay, so just show that you're adding 18. And see, what you want to do is that equal sign always comes down. This side's 38. That cancels that out. That leaves x equals 38. Okay, when you check it, you're just going to have 38 minus 18 is 20, and that's right. Use your calculator if you need to. Okay, the next one. How do you start number 3? What did you do? Add 10. Thank you. Okay, so we add 10 to both sides. The right side's now 26. The left side is 2x. Okay, what answer did you get? 13. Divide by 2, and you'll end up having, that cancels, that just gives 1x equals 13. Okay, and then for checking, just write it like this. You just say 2 times the answer, minus 10 is 16. Work it out until you know you're right. This would be 2 times 13 is 26. 26 minus 10 is 16, so that's good enough. All right, everybody okay? I didn't see too many problems. I did see a few issues with number 4, and that's because the 10 is written in front of the negative 2x. And that bothers students sometimes when they're learning this. The easiest thing to do is get rid of the 10. That's a positive 10. And if you subtract 10 from both sides, that's going to wipe that out. That goes to 0. So what you'll have now is you'll have negative 2x equals negative, and that's 28, right? Okay, now what do? Divide by negative 2. Okay, so do this. And what answer did you get? Hopefully 14. Okay, that's it. Okay, so do it like that. Now, we're going to look at in a little bit different way to write your steps where you can just move stuff. And some of you may already know how to do that and have a good background for that. For checking, you just do 10 minus 2 times 14 and see if that's negative 8. See, that would be 10 minus 28, and that's correct. Okay? All right, so that's it. So those are the basic ones, and I always want to make sure that I get the basic ones done, and then one other kind of step with another basic example, and then we'll kind of start building, and they'll start getting a little bit more complicated. But the complexity of these, it's the same process, it's just there's more to do. Okay, so what I'm going to look at next here is when you have variables on both sides of your equation. Okay, and there's a couple of ways you can do this. One way to do this is just kind of the way I'm going to teach this, is if you have the x on both sides, you need to decide which side you want that on. It can always be the left, it can be the right, it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide either I'm going to get rid of the 5x or the 2x. Doesn't make any difference. The way I do it is I usually get rid of the one that's smaller, but you don't have to. So if I want to get rid of 2x, well, I subtract 2x. Okay, and just show that you're doing that to both sides. Okay, now what you always want to do when you're learning math, and if you're getting better at math, which is your goal, bring everything down. Go down your paper. Just keep bringing things down. Don't lose the equal sign. That's going to be 3x now plus 3. And then the right side is going to be 20. Okay, so you've accomplished your goal. You got the x on the left side. Okay, what's the next step? Yeah, get rid of the 3. We want that x to stay where it is. So what you do now is you subtract 3, subtract 3. Okay, I'm going to bring this down. That's going to give 3x equals 17. Okay, then I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And then you're going to get a fraction answer. Now, if you get a fraction answer, you don't need to go to your calculator and get a decimal or anything. You just leave it alone. You just make sure that it's reduced, and you don't need mixed numbers. That's good. If your fraction's reduced, that's okay. And it's okay for the top number to be bigger than the bottom one. It doesn't matter. There's no law that says it has to be a mixed number or a decimal. Just leave it alone. Okay, now it's going to get a little bit more complicated on the checking. So what you want to do on this, you want to write this like this. This would be 5 times the answer, which is 17 over 3, and then plus 3 equals, and then on the other side it's going to be 2 times 17 thirds, and then plus 20. All right, now I'm going to use this as an opportunity to review fractions a little bit because you're going to need that. So first of all, when you multiply two fractions, what do? You go straight across. You multiply the numerators, you multiply the denominators. Use a calculator if you need to. So if you go 5 times 17, that's 85. 1 times 3 is 3. It's 85 thirds. Don't use decimals, okay? Just use fractions. Fractions are better than decimals because decimals sometimes repeat forever. Then bring down the 3. Do the same thing here. Okay, go straight across on that. That would be 34 over 3. And then plus 20 like this. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to get a common denominator. All right? And this is some stuff that a lot of you are going to have to review. What's the common denominator for 3 and 1? 3. So what you need to do is multiply that by 3, and you got to do the same thing at the top. That's how you keep that in balance, and that makes the denominators the same. So this is now going to be 85 over 3, and that's going to be plus 9 over 3. 9 over 3 is 3, right? 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay. Then we go to this right side. We have 34 over 3 here. Common denominator between 3 and 1 is 3, so multiply that by 3 over 3 like that. So that's going to give you 60 over 3, and then you're ready to add those together. Do you guys understand what I did?
Nope.
If I went through and just gave people a quiz on fractions right now, I suspect a lot of people wouldn't do it so hot.
Is that like, I mean, do you want us to do the check your answer? I mean, is that required?
Not on like what you do on My Math Lab. Now, when I give written assignments, some of them will. So, because, you know, checking is how you get good with your arithmetic. Students a lot of times don't even want to bother with it, but it's how you get good at your arithmetic. So what happens, I'm going to go over to the side and just kind of show you.
Doesn't that become 30 and a third?
What's that? Which one are you talking about?
I mean, like 34 thirds plus 60 thirds.
Well, yeah, I'm not done yet. Yeah, it'll end up being 94 thirds, and so will the left side. So then we're done. I'm going to go over and kind of review this fraction thing again. So once you have the same denominator, add the numerator. So that 85 plus 9 is 94. That's 94 thirds. Same thing here, 94 thirds. So it's right. Okay, now see, that's a great exercise in working with fractions. Now I'm going to go to this stage right here and just kind of review this because I think I lost a lot of you there. So if you're doing 85 thirds plus 3, okay, how do you make a whole number into a fraction? You put it over 1. Okay, now the denominators have to be the same. And you always have to multiply the top and bottom by something to make it match with that. Because otherwise you're changing the problem. So if I multiply by 3, now the denominators are the same, right? Well, the reason I multiply the top by that is because what's 3 over 3 anyway? It's 1. And if you multiply a number by 1, it doesn't change anything. So you end up with 85 over 3 plus 9 over 3. What is 9 over 3 anyway? It's 3. See, I didn't change the problem. I just changed the way it looked. Now, I keep the denominator, and I add the numerator. Okay? You're going to review that. You're going to review that on your first My Math Lab homework. You're going to need to brush up on how to add fractions and stuff. Okay? All right. All right, so I'll get you started on that for a review. All right? Okay, now let's go to this next one here. So the next thing you want to look at is what the distributive property is. And anytime you have a number in front of a set of parentheses, and then there's a minus or plus sign, you do the distributive property. Okay, so if you need a review on this, here's how you do this. You multiply the 3 by everything inside. So 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, that's how that goes. Okay, in your head, what's the right side? 2x plus 14. Right, okay, good. Okay, so if you need to do a distributive property, then do that. A distributive property is when you have a number in front of a set of parentheses, and there's at least one or two or more things added or subtracted. Now, what you have is you have variables on both sides. Okay, and I always say, get this taken care of first. Decide which one you want to go away, either the 6 or the 2. Which one do you want me to get rid of? The 2. I go with the 2 because it's smaller, but you don't have to. It's your call. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do minus 2x here, minus 2x here. We're doing the balance scale. We're doing the same thing to both sides. Okay, the left side is now 6 minus 2 is 4. 15 comes down, equal sign comes down. That goes away. That gives that. Okay, now what do you do now? Add 15, because remember your goal is to get the x by itself. So we want to add 15 here, add 15 here, and that will be 4x equals 29. Then how do you close it off? Divide by 4. Okay, good. Okay, so what we're going to have is x equals 29 over 4. You don't want a decimal or anything. That's what you want. Okay, no decimal needed. Just leave it that way. Okay, right? Now with this one, I'll take a little bit of different approach on the checking this time. So you could do this if you wanted to. And I think a lot of times students prefer this in this class. So if I just take 29 divided by 4, that's going to be 7.25. Okay, if the decimals stop, then you can check them with the decimals. If they go on forever, it's best to use fractions. So what I'm going to do on the checking here, so I'm just going to do this. Okay, I'm going to do 3 and then parentheses, 2 times 7.25 minus 5. Now on the right side, I'm going to do 2 times 7.25 plus 7. Just plug it in. You can use your calculator on this if you want to. So next thing I'm going to do is I do this. Got to follow order of operations. Okay, so if I do that, that's like 14.5, I think. Minus 5. I'm not doing a distributive property. I'm just working inside the parentheses. Then if I go on the right side, 7 1/4 plus 7 is 14 1/4. So it's like that. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and do this and do this. So that's going to be 3 times, and then this is, on a calculator, you would get 9.5. And then on this side, that would be, I don't have a calculator, that would be 28.5. And same thing here. This would also be 28.5. So that's how it goes. So see, you can use a decimal if you want to, but I would only recommend you do a decimal if the decimals stop. Does that make sense to you? Hey, no, say something. I understand it. Do you? Okay. And see, the checking, don't be lazy about it, because one of the reasons students are so weak with their arithmetic is they never bother doing this. And by doing that, you get better at this stuff. And to me, if you can master arithmetic, then you can master algebra, because that's what algebra is. It's a study of arithmetic. All right. Okay, now I'm going to show you a little bit of an alternative way to do this. And a lot of times students only want the teacher to teach them one way to do something. And you want to know a little bit of a variety, because, you know, sometimes one way is a little better than the other. The way I'm going to show you now, to me, is when you get more advanced, this is the way to do it. So what you can do is you can just move stuff. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. And I can save a step by doing this. I'm going to move the 12x over there. Okay, that way all of the x's go to the left. This thing is not a variable, so I'm going to move that to the right. Now, there's not a thing wrong with doing the problem this way if you want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down the 15x. Now, when you move the 12x, what happens to it? It's no longer 12x, it's minus 12x. So its sign changes. So if you want to do it this way, just be sure you change the sign. Okay? Now, I'm going to leave the 10 where it is. But when I move the minus 8, what does the minus 8 become? Plus 8. If you do your problems this way, you'll save time. Okay, and it's just easy to just get all your x's moved, all the numbers moved that way. Just change signs. Now, what's the left side? That's 3x. The right side is 18. Then you can divide by 3, so you get x equals 9. Now, when I teach more advanced classes, that's the way that I try to get the students to do it that way. Saves time. It's a nice, efficient way to do it. Does that make sense, what I did? Some of you are already used to doing it that way, and you can kind of do this either way. So this one, what you want to do on this one is you want to start by doing distributive property. So now watch carefully with your arithmetic. That's going to be negative 3x. What's negative 3 times 8? Is that negative or positive when I do a negative 3 times 8? That's negative, right? So I just put minus 24. Won't mix up on your signs. That's a negative result, so put minus 24. Okay, write your equal sign when you go to the right side. 2 times x is 2x. And then 2 times, you can think of that as negative 4. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. So just put minus 8. So be solid with your distributive property. You can make sure that you brush up on that and get that down good. All right, does everybody follow me there? Yeah.
I got x equals 6 for A.
You got what? Oh, on the, that's what, yeah, you're looking at me funny back there too. Class, what's 18 divided by 3? 6. 9. I do stuff like that sometimes. All you got to do is just let me know, because I will make dumb mistakes like that sometimes. So thank you. Okay, yeah, that one's 6. Okay, now on this one, again, you want to decide which side you want stuff on. Now I'm going to do it this way, okay, because you want to be flexible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to decide, okay, I'm going to move all of my x's over there. And I'm going to move this over here. Okay, you can get things this way if you want to. It doesn't matter. And just do this in your head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the negative 24 down. I move the minus 8. So now it becomes plus 8. Okay. If I go to the right side, the 2x comes down. I've decided to leave it. The negative 3, what happens to the negative 3x? Becomes positive 3x. Okay, see what I did? Okay, I just decided I want x's on the right side. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, now this is going to be, when you do that, that's going to be negative, what, 16? Like that. Okay, and then this side's going to be 5x. Okay, and then what do you do to finish up? 5 by 5, right. Yeah, divide by 5, so you do that. Then you got a fraction answer. Okay, so that's x equals negative 16 over 5. Okay, so again, what I'm doing on this is trying to show you if you have variables on both sides, you can just move all the x's to one side, all the numbers that don't have an x on the other side. If you do that, you save time. Yeah, you got something back there? Are you okay?
So whenever you move something from one side to the other, if it's a positive, it becomes a negative.
And the reason is, if the way I showed you earlier, if you're trying to get rid of adding, you subtract. That's why it changes the sign. If you're getting rid of subtraction, you add. So just change the signs and do it that way. Yeah.
I did it the other way, where
And if you did, I can tell you what you should have got was negative 5x equals positive 16.
Yeah.
Is that what you got?
Well, no, I got 16 over negative.
And then you would just divide by negative 5, and you'd have the same answer I have.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. It doesn't matter what side you put the x on. Okay, but it's a negative answer, so when you have a fraction, that I don't mind if you give me that answer. It's just preferred that you either write it this way or you just put the negative in front of the fraction. But you're okay. You did it fine. Yeah.
My question, the negative 8 is because the negative 4 inside is multiplied by the 2 on the outside,
right? Right. Yeah, see what you can do on this is something that a lot of times bothers students a little bit. like if you had negative 2 times negative 2x minus 7. Well, what are you doing? Negative times negative is positive, right? Negative times negative there is positive, so it's this, 4x plus 14. Make sure that you know your rules for multiplication and division and negatives, and you won't go wrong. Okay, all right? Okay, so I'm going to let you do 2 problems. I'm not going to probably have you do the checking. I'm not going to grade you on the checking on these, but you can if you want to do that. I'd just like to spend some time in class going through some of the checking. So go ahead and do the next 2 problems. You can do it either way. I mean, you can, like on number 1, you can move the 5x and move the 6. If you want to do it that way, it's fine. It's easier that way to me. It's faster to learn to do the problems that way. And then number 2 is you got to start with the distributive property. And sometimes you'll get fraction answers. Just make sure your fractions are reduced is kind of the number 1 thing. Okay. And then you can go ahead and if you get these done while I'm kind of checking people, you can go down and try some of the ones down below if you want. I haven't worked them out, so I don't even know what the answers are. Anybody else get -9 on number 1?
Yep.
Okay. Just making sure. You seem like you know what you're doing. Okay, you went ahead and checked them. So if they're pretty easy to check if they're whole numbers. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And see what you need to do now is just complete that. That's 2x. 7 minus 5 is 2x. You want to write on your paper 2x. And then write your equals. Write your equals. Bring everything down. And that you can take a calculator if you want to. That's -18. Okay. And then if you're getting rid of the number in front, that's multiplication. So what do you do? Divide. Close up by 2. You got it. Because you're doing it that right way, that moving things is pretty good.
I think my biggest thing is like, I don't understand any of the second number.
Yeah, I'm just, what I'm doing is collecting things that are the same. So you moved everything right, and then it's just putting them together. So minus 5
Oh, okay,
So
I didn't know.
yeah,
So
and
you
that's
just
what you call
pretend
collecting like terms. You put them together. You'll always end up with something times x equals a number if you do it right. Always be. Okay, that looks good. What are we getting on the second one? I'm seeing some -34, is that?
Yeah,
-34, okay. I haven't checked on all of them, but I want to just kind of have enough time to see my students' skill and see what we need to work on here. So I think -9, -34, you seem like you know what you're doing. Okay, that's good. Everybody's got different backgrounds. That looks good. Good. You guys are doing good. If I can get people to solve equations good, then I'm making a major accomplishment today. That's your distributive property. That's one thing you were asking me about. So that would be 3x minus 18, right? 3 times x is 3.
I was doing that.
Not yet. You got to do the distributive property first. Okay. You got to do that first, then you'll be okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and go over these and. Because I want to get to the problems that have got fractions in it. Those are the ones that are the hardest to learn how to do. Okay, so, and if you did this differently than I did, it's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 5x there and the 6 there. So that would give me 7x minus 5x equals -24 plus 6. Now that's the way you're going to see me do these problems most of the time in class is get you to move stuff. Because that's better for higher level math, okay? If you're not used to that, you don't have to retrain yourself to do that, but I'd recommend you try. So this is going to be 2x, that's -18, okay? Then you divide by 2, and you get x equals -9. And I'm not going to take the time to check, but a lot of you did, and it should work out, okay? All right, the first one, you got to do, next one, distributive property. So you got 3 times x is 3x, 3 times 6 is 18. See, that sign just comes down. It will only change if, like, that's a -3. Okay, then on the right side, you have 5x, and then 5 times 10 is 50. Be sure you do that first. Okay? Now, Which side do you want me to get the variables on, left or right, or do you care? I don't care. I'm going to go left. Okay, I don't know how most of you did this, but I'm just going to say, okay, move that there and move the number there. So that's going to give 3x minus 5x, if I do it that way. 50 is still there, and it's that negative 18 becomes positive 18. Okay, so 3x minus 5x is negative 2x. 50 plus 18 is 68. And then what do? You divide by the same number. Okay, a lot of times I see students they're thinking opposite, so they want to divide by 2. You want to divide by negative 2, because you want this to become 1x. And then that was what? Negative 34. So your answer is negative 34. Looks like most of us got that, so that's pretty good. I like to see that on the first day of class. I can tell you're shaky with fractions, and we'll work on that and get a little bit better on that. Any questions about this? Okay, we're doing pretty good so far. All right, now they're going to get a little more complicated, and the only thing that makes them more complicated is there's more stuff. That's it. But if you've got down what I've showed you, then the more advanced ones just mean you have more numbers to deal with. So let's go down, let's do this one, and then I'll have you try this one if you haven't done that yet. So you start with the distributive property. So you always want to look for any point of the problem where you have to do the distributive property. So here we'd have is 2 times x is 2x. We'd have 2 times 4 is 8. And then we just bring down the plus 8. Okay, like that. Okay? Then you go to the right side. You'd have 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 5 is 20 minus 10. Okay? Make sure you got your signs right when you're doing that. Okay. Now, to me, the best thing to do, this is the best habit to get into, is put stuff together. Okay, don't start moving stuff, although you could. Look at the left side. Is there anything that you can put together on the left side? Yeah, what is that? 0. Just get rid of it. How about over here? Well, you got those two things, right? What is that? Negative 30. That's 2 debts. Debt 20, debt 10 is debt 30. Two negatives like that. So what you'd end up having then, that goes to 0, so you just have 2x, and then this would be 4x minus 30. That's the only thing that's different on this example is collect stuff, now start moving stuff. So what I'm going to do is, hey, all I need to do is move this over there, and then I've got my x's on the left side. So if I do it this way, I would have 2x minus 4x is equal to negative 30. Okay, like that. All right. So what I have here is this will be negative 2x equals negative 30. Okay, then I can divide both sides by negative 2. And what that's going to give me then is x equals, and what's the answer? 15. It's positive, so it's 2 negatives divided, so that's going to be positive 15. Just like that. Okay, distributive property first if you have to. Collect like terms second. Then start rearranging stuff in order. You got to do this stuff in a certain order if you're going to get these right. Okay? All right, is there any questions? Okay, go ahead and do the next one, and I'll just give you a couple minutes to do that next one and see what you get. Some of you have already done that. So I want to kind of get through that one and then maybe have time to probably show you a little bit when your equations have fractions in it. So I want to do that a little bit. Okay? So the kind of the good news on this section is if you do well with what we're doing today, then the rest of the section kind of depends on it. You know, so if you get your equation solving down, then you'll be able to do inequalities fine, and formulas are really the same thing. So, okay. Anybody got an answer yet? I'm just kind of, what you got? 5. Anybody else get 5? You got 5? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start with it, and you can just keep at it if you're in the middle of it. So let's see, you'd get negative 6. Now here's a place where students slip up. What is this going to be when you multiply those two things? Positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. So if you didn't get this, you need to be aware of that. That's positive 9x. I would predict some students would make that mistake. Then the plus 1 comes down. So be really careful on that distributive property. Okay. Now, the thing on this is I see students all the time want to just make that 16. You can't do that because you have to multiply before you add. You have order of operations. So what you have to do actually is you got to do this distributive property. So we're going to do this. The 14 just comes down. Okay, so that's going to be 14. And then we have 2x. And then 2 times 8 is going to be plus 16 like that. Okay, so that's how it's got to start, is you got to do that. Can't do anything else. Now, notice on the left side, you can put together these two numbers, because they're just numbers. And on the right side, you can put those two numbers together. And it doesn't really matter what order you write these things in. So this is going to be 9x, negative 6 plus 1 is minus 5, so I put minus 5. You could put that in front of the 9x too. And then this is going to be 2x, and then 14 plus 16 is 30. Okay, so you want to get to that point on your paper. That's the whole key to getting this right. Now you can start rearranging. So I'm going to choose to move the 2x there and the 5 there. And be sure you change your sign. So I would have 9x here minus 2x equals 30 plus 5. Okay, so that would go like that. All right, so it looks like what we have here is 7x. That's equal to 35. So what we do on this is divide both sides by 7. So you get x equals 5. And that's what you said you had, right? Okay. Now your work can look a little bit different than mine. You can get the x on the right side instead of the left side. But if you get your arithmetic correct, then you should be able to do fine. Okay. All right, so how you guys doing so far, first day? Okay. Did anybody take math during the summer? Nobody did? Okay. So you have a little break in your math. So, I mean, sometimes you have to spend a little bit of time getting stuff going. All right, so before Thursday, be sure you go on D2L and, read the syllabus. Be sure you do the things you're supposed to on D2L. Get my math lab set up and start working on this stuff. And one thing I always say about math, what you need to always do is do a little bit every day. Okay, like you're a guitar player back there. It's always good to play a little bit every day. Yeah, because you lose stuff if you don't. Math's the same way. A little bit every day. Discipline.
My school's 8 hours a day.
Good for you. See, there was a time when I used to have time for that, but no more. That's awesome.
Don't you know that paper in?
What's that?
Don't you have this?
Oh, yeah, I always forget that. Just bring that